hard later. Mr. Flex and Papa got the old city lock with the girls in each and every area. Sipping NLC with no chaser.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night, depending on where in the world you are joining me from. I am Alluminati, and this is the Crypto and Cognac podcast show, as always, powered by our friends at Alti.com, the one-click crypto wallet for Telegram, WhatsApp, and Discord, and as always, fueled by my friends at Hennessy TT. Tonight, I'm going to be lighting it up with some Hennessy VS, and I am super excited for the conversation that I'm going to have. I know you guys are probably fed up of me always saying I'm excited, but that's because every single guest that I have on is someone that I'm deeply excited to have conversations with, to share the conversation with you guys. And today is no different. I have Mr. Andrea Cadioli. Andrea, we're going to call him Cadio all evening, is a designer architect operating in the field of applied and theoretical arts. He was born in Italy. He has worked as a musician and TV presenter for both EMI and MTV before moving to Beijing to complete his master's in 2 degrees, a double degree program through the Polytechnic of Turin. And he just helped me with this, Tsinghua University. And in 2016, he is the award recipient of the 2016 European Union Scholarship for the Master's Program of Southern California Institute of Architecture. His master's thesis won the Sci-Arc Thesis Award in that same year. He is well experienced in his field. He has worked, and his work has been exhibited at Hauser and Wirth, MoCA, and the Venice Biennale. So before I ruin any more of these words, I'm going to bring Cadio on. Cadio.
Ciao, Alluminati. Well, since you say every time that you're very excited to speak with your speaker, this time I'm going to say it. I'm very excited to be speaking with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Listen, I'm so happy. This conversation has been, I think, a year in the making.
Yes.
Ricardo has been telling me, you need to talk to Cadio, you need to talk to Cadio, you need to talk to Cadio. And finally, we got it synced up, and here we are.
Here we are, excited more than beyond. And you just finished being in Miami for Crypto Week, so I guess the timing is perfect. And thank you, Ricardo, for introducing us.
The timing is perfect. And we're going to jump straight in. I gave a little bit of an introduction, but I want you to tell the community a little bit more about your journey, both in the traditional space and what led you to this crypto space. And then we're going to go from there.
So my career has been a mess. As you said, I was born in Italy, and then I always been very into the art field. For a long time I studied music, and I actually worked as a musician for 6-7 years professionally. I had a band called Diary. We became actually kind of popular in Italy. We had 3 albums with EMI, and then I went into entertainment, working with MTV as a VJ, and it was a completely different aspect of my career, but at the same time, very music oriented. So it was just one step further. And then reality brought me back to art world. I finished my architecture school, and I went to study architecture in between Beijing and Turin, where I was located at the time. I worked a little bit in Beijing. I worked in Tokyo, in Fujimoto, again, architecture offices. And then I landed in the magical world of Los Angeles, where I first got my master in Sci-Arc, which is private university here in LA of architecture, very important in the field, in the American field of architecture. And now I'm teaching there while I'm also working for Bellsberg Architects. And it's interesting because my relation with the digital space and NFTs really comes from the way that for years I interpreted architecture and really what architecture is. And ultimately, for me and for the practice that is the one that is taught in the school, architecture is just an art form. And so the relation in between the digital spaces and spaces that are there are potential and not actual is something that is very close to me, and I'm happy to be here talking about it today.
Okay, sounds amazing. I mean, there is so much that I want to talk about with you, but since you kind of led off with SciArc and what you're doing there, let's talk about your architectural work and with the boom of the ideas around the metaverse, and we're seeing big brand name companies going into the metaverse, building things in the metaverse. How do we see architecture and architects playing a part in creating this new digital world, this metaverse?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that it's important, first of all, to think that we are at the beginning of a rediscovery of the concept of metaverse, that obviously is not an idea per se new, but what is new is really the power that comes with technology, and in particular the technology that is every day allocated and allowed to us through our phones. So first thing, I want to look at the metaverse thinking that the metaverse is not only technology, is not only something that is going through a computer. It is started with a computer. It starts with a computer, but it's a lot more. And in particular, I think it's important when we're talking about the metaverse because it's such a undefined and in progress space. I think it's important to remember that the future of metaverse is not going to be only inside a cell phone or a computer, but it's going to be something that is going to create social connection and is going to create communities. It's going to create new identities. And so if you start thinking about it from a perspective not only digital, but a reality that is growing out of the digital, then it's very simple to start understanding how architects, what we do, in particular, if you consider architecture not as a practice, but as a verb, to architect, to program, to design, then it's very simple to understand how our field is at the forefront of the metaverse, especially if we consider the metaverse as something beyond an XR at one-dimensional space, but something that becomes three-dimensional. And that's how I try to consider my practice.
Yeah, I mean, you said something there that kind of triggers me back to something that Ricardo said to me, because in the Caribbean especially, we build things without a lot of contemplation and consideration of how people are going to engage with it. The way we build is not very from the perspective of experiential use, so we see a lot of things built just for the sake of it being big or for the sake of it having multiple rooms, as the case may be. But Ricardo has always said, great architecture allows or considers how people are going to live in the space, how people are going to use the space, how people are going to experience the space. And I think one of the things that you said there about how the metaverse is gonna impact relationships and communities, I think that plays a huge part into how the metaverse is going to be built and how architecture is going to play a major role in that.
Absolutely. And it's important because we are already in different level and in different forms, but we are already living in some sort of metaverse. When we are thinking metaverse very often in the field of our exploration, we are talking about Second Life, which was the origin of metaverse with 3D character, 3D spaces, 3D rooms. But it's interesting because if we start really thinking how we are living every day, we are already creating digital augmentation in our everyday life. When we are using Instagram filters, when we are going live, just like me and you are doing now, what we're doing, we are creating spaces that are already an augmentation, a digital augmentation on our physical reality. So the metaverse is expanding but it's already here and we're already living inside it. So every time that you start thinking about architecture in the sense of one brick over the other, you start thinking that the space is ultimately shaping the way that we live. And in the history of architecture, there has been technological revolution that they made building not only looking different, but also operating completely differently.
Yeah.
The moment that you start creating curtain walls, and then you were able to create skyscrapers that were completely made of glass, obviously the way that you're living the building is completely different. And so thinking about the same revolution that technologies like the elevator had on the way that we are using buildings is not too different than thinking what technology is doing to us right now, what it means to live in a space that is XR, is in between an augmented spaces or a virtual space or something in between. So it's clearly a space in progress, but also this is what architects for a lot of time have done already. So I'm not sure if you're an architect. I hope you are not, because if not, this will be like ruining the surprise. But let me tell you, architecture is a very slow practice. Usually you'd start thinking and designing a building, and then it takes 5, 6, 7 years to make it happen. Because of that, a lot of the time that a designer spends creating the space is completely digital. It's not actual, it's factual. It's an object that is not there yet, and we're already speaking and talking about the way that the material, the forms, and the light and the experiences are going to shape the place. So the transition between what I do as an architect and what in the physical space when I build an office, and what I do in the digital space when I create with my student a room full of impossible objects that magically can actually happen in front of us. Right. What I'm doing, I'm simply creating architecture.
Yeah. So as you reference those two things, how do we see the absence of limitations in the digital space and what architects can do now in terms of pushing the boundaries of their ideas in the metaverse? How do you think that is going to impact how we eventually push the boundaries in the physical space?
Yeah, I think this is super interesting, because if you visit any metaverse space right now, well, not any, let's not be so generic, but if you visit some of these words, all these words have gravity. All these words, you have stairs, you have elevators. And I'm always like, why there is gravity? There is no need to have gravity. Why our body are shaped with 2 arms? And why don't we look like a battery? Why don't we look like a hurricane? Why don't we look like a mega object? It's because we're still referencing our physical experience and trying to translate it into a digital world. This comes obviously with some aspects that are useful for designers. When I design for Oculus Mediums, obviously what I'm doing, I'm creating something that you are going to perceive through your eyes, that are positioned at a certain height, that are positioned in a certain way with the object that is the screen. Now, more complicated, they start understanding how you can create, let's say, a metaverse where you are not a human, but maybe you are a cell, or maybe you are a leaf. What would be your life if you were an ant? What would be your life if you were a butterfly and you had 3 days to live in this metaverse? This is, to me, the beauty of these digital spaces, that they are allowing us to get inside a world that is post-human, to the point in which we can become anything at any scale, right, organic or inorganic. And so what I'm trying to do with my students is really start imagining what would happen if you imagine to get a petri dish, and inside of the petri dish we start adding some chips, some electricity, some bacteria, some plants. Then we shake it very fast. We let it sit in there, and we look in 50, 60 years, what would be this new environment when the proportion of organic versus inorganic are not there anymore, what would be the politics that this really creates? So I think that the metaverse has a potential way beyond the idea of creating a space that is digital and occupying it with our own legs and arms.
Yeah, I mean, and I've checked out a lot of your work.
Mm-hmm.
I've been binging your work, both your architectural work and some of your more what do we call that? Theoretical art stuff.
I would call it a big mistake. No, I'm joking. These are courses that are being taught inside of the School of Architecture where I teach, which is called Southern California Institute of Architecture.
Right.
And yes, the specific project that I develop with my students are mostly theoretical, because what I do, I teach a class which is called visual studies. What we're really trying to do is to refine the aesthetic qualities, the perception qualities of our students, but also allowing them to, while learning tools and techniques that are sometimes the one proper of the NFTs, the crypto digital spaces, we are allowing them to learn aesthetics. So it's something between about thinking differently and also designing differently.
Okay.
So that's my website. I'm really sorry for that too.
I wanted to share, some of the stuff that you have here, because for me, like, I feel like you've already been playing in this world that is outside of what our current reality is, and this particular piece for me was just mind blowing, and I was like, I don't want to see anything in a metaverse that does not look like this or beyond.
Yeah, I think this is important.
I don't want to see anything that I could walk down the street and see.
Yeah. And like, I think this project here in particular was funny because we developed it, we won the project, and then the project is never going to happen. Now, the beauty of a project like this one that I developed when I was working in China for a company called Plasma Studio, and by the way, this is just a sneak peek, the project was an incredibly big and developed and fully developed project to be actually built, is leaving traces of ideas and opportunities beyond the obvious creation of the object, because obviously this object never been built and never will, right? But it exists in our users. So what would happen, and this is a bigger conversation that architects are happening, what would happen if we are creating a world where all the incredible projects that we designed, we could actually physically live in, perceive?
Yeah.
Something that is very concerning our practice, which is architecture, is the fact that the majority of our work is lost in the process. We are working a lot to create something that then very often is reduced by the complexity of the agent that a multi-million project necessitates. Stakeholders, properties, cities, the rules, etc., etc. You take this larger project, larger than life, and then you make it smaller to the point in which it can fit with all these parameters. Now, the majority of our intentions, the original intentions, they get lost. And the ability of an architect is being able to carry in the physical world the essence of the architectural building, no matter all these restrictions, right? But then it's important because for years and years, projects have been left aside, they've been abandoned. And the one that you see on my website is only one. In the career of an architect, there are millions of projects that they started and they lost. They never going to be built. So something that some architects are thinking, and I think it's interesting, is to say, what would happen if suddenly each architect, instead of showing a 3D model, a 3D object of a miniature building, what if you start like creating a world where all your building are there? What if another person comes by and is like, I want that building, I like it.
Yeah.
Can we make it?
I want it.
Yeah. So again, the idea of metaverse is not only revolutionary for our way of living, because it's going to change the way that we're thinking spaces, but in particular, the way that we are already now thinking our practice is obviously changing, and it's going to continue to change without any question. Now, how does it change? It's up to us. It's up to us creating this reality. There is a very important research group called Google Art and AI. And one of the most important aspects that they're trying to understand is we are creating AIs, and we're questioning what is AI going to do to our society.
Right.
And one of the premise is that the AI is not a divine presence that we cannot fully grasp, but is only in a top-down system influencing our life. Right. We are creating the AI system. We are injecting the parameters that are going to create artificial intelligence. So the way that the artificial intelligence is going to operate depends on us. We are the ones that are projecting the values in the artificial intelligence. And so it's the metaverse. What is the metaverse? We don't know, but it's coming. And it's our duty as thinkers, designers, and investors in this new space to question the reality of it so that we can create a space that is in which equity is an important value, in which ecology is an important value, in which health and prosperity are values that we can carry. It would be a very sad metaverse if we would bring inside it values like war and violence. But these are conversations that are happening, and these are conversations that we need to be part of.
Yeah, I mean, it's very true, and I mean, I think it's important questions to be asked and important conversations to be had, because like you said, you know, we've already taken to the metaverse, and we've already taken in these things that we didn't have to carry, like gravity. You know, we have metaverses where we walk around or drive around. Like, why would we take commute into the metaverse? Like, you live in LA.
Yes.
Like, why would you take commute when we can?
I know. I don't know if you remember. There was a time. I think it's still there. There was a time in which I was a gamer. Well, there is this game called World of Warcraft, and yes. World of Warcraft is so large. The digital world is so large that if you go on top of a bird and you fly through it, you fly for months without seeing the same landscape.
Right.
And so my question is always, why do we imagine to commute, to walk in these spaces? And actually, this is interesting because at the beginning, when Second Life was one of the
biggest games,
you were actually transporting yourself from one place to the other. And I was like, I wish that could be my life. And in some way, that is our life now.
Yes.
I am able to not commute physically, but I'm already able to finish a work 10 minutes ago and be in a conversation with you right now.
Yeah.
So that's when I'm saying that it's very easy to turn on the fantasy engine and start looking at how far we can go in the future with the fantasy. But it's harder, especially today, to realize that the majority of the things that we are discussing here are already here. The mediums change. The way that they're going to develop is going to change. Obviously, it's going to change. But the seed of the technology, of the reality that we are going to create is already here. And this is the best part of the metaverse.
Yeah, for sure. So before we switch the conversation, I wanna go back to your website. I want to just look at a few other pieces, because I definitely need to find out if these were built, if these are going to be in Cadioli world.
Let me tell you, this project was developed with an amazing office here in LA called Atelier Manfredini. I can tell you this project is not going to happen. And I can tell you something more. None of my projects are ever going to happen up today. There is not one project that I started from the beginning of my career till the end.
No, like this.
Never happened.
Why? Like,
I know. I have the feeling, and that's my impression, that architecture is a field that requires patience. And I'm blessed because my anxiety and my need for speed is well compensated with academia.
right.
So if on one side it's very difficult for me to envision a future where all the things I design are there, there is a present that is already happening for me in a quick matter of time.
Yeah.
And I have to be thankful to the community that allows me to do that, which is the community of my university called Southern California Institute of Architecture, SCIARC. And to my students, that they trust me, and that's the most incredible thing, they trust me in these incredible journeys that bring them into this universe that they create, where objects are not materic, are not organic, are not anymore necessarily physical or digital. They are somewhere in between atoms and bits and genes. So you could imagine a battery creating a new generation by having a reproductive system with a butterfly. And what would be a mixing between a butterfly and a battery? Well, these are the questions that my students try to answer, and we are not the only one, but they are the only one that are doing it with this messy Italian accent, and that's because of me. And that's because of me.
I love this.
But this is really exciting.
Like, I love this.
Actually, this is physical. This is probably one of the few things that are physical. Yeah, this was a beautiful project, again, developed with Elena Manfredini from Atelier Manfredini here in LA. I think this was a good project in which the client trusted us with technologies that are very innovative. In this case, a 3D printed gold. And they trusted us that we could create something that is so weird, so magical, with shapes that they don't look like they could exist in the real world, but they are. These are physical objects that these are pictures actually of physical objects that we designed and constructed.
This is amazing. I think this makes up for the other things that weren't built.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, for a lot of years, I thought that the only way to be an architect is to build things. And then I realized when I started building things that it's not necessary. And now you are in the sections where my students, they develop spaces that are never going to be necessarily built, but they are inventing realities. And because ultimately we can live inside them, because we can put goggles on and we can start living inside them, they are creating words that they were not existing the day before that they started working it. And I think this is very interesting for them.
You know what I love that phrasing, inventing reality.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds weird, but when you process it, it's real, because all reality is invented. Because everything did not exist before it existed.
Absolutely. And actually it's fascinating because there was a time in which architects, they were having visions larger than life. La Sagrada Familia, it's an object that has been designed knowing that very hardly the architect would have been able to finish it. Right. And knowing that very hardly the technology would have been there to support the creativity.
Right.
And yet, it's going to be finished, I think, in a couple of years. It's fundamental to me today to have a negotiation. There was a time in which the reality was very clear. It was very simple. And so inventing words, inventing environment like I do with my students, or inventing spaces was the place where to be with your mind. I think today we have the chances, because of technological advancement, to really position ourselves in between present and future. It would be too easy to invent a future that is completely different from our reality. But we as designers and we as people living in this specific time, in this moment, in this zenith moment of the world, we cannot discern our ideas from logics of ecological crisis or futures of inequality. So when we create this word and when we are thinking crypto, NFTs, it's beautiful because these places are opportunities for a radical change into the way that the world that we are living could exist. If you remember a couple of months ago, when last winter, when was it last winter? Oh my God, it was 2 winters ago. I'm aging every second. So when this big conversation on NFT started, there was this like dilemma of like, oh my God, but every time that you're minting an NFT, it's so much energy burned. And I remember designers, artists being like, I'm not gonna mint anything until we don't solve it. And guess what? Now we can. Now there are technologies that allow us to avoid these cost for the environment more than the gas fee. It's really a cost for the environment. And then it's really exciting because it's a community that is able to adapt and to respond very easily. And this is the beauty really of what we're doing here. We are part of a movement, and a movement that is very young, very open-minded. And so the future is really in our hand.
So we talked a little bit about architecture and its relationship to the metaverse, and design and its relationship to the metaverse. And you've started kind of talking a little bit about NFTs. How do you see the NFT space playing a part in everything that you've said before, and what attracted you to that space particularly? How have you gotten involved in that space particularly? Because I've seen your work, but and it's mind blowing. I mean, it's
thank you.
It's so much better than so many of the things that I've been.
Well, okay. So to me, the beauty of what I do is that is a communication, and
Right.
I hope that with my architecture, with my ideas, I can make people think. So when they started the conversation on NFTs and the possibility of creating new mediums to reach, to branch out to new publics, well, I was like, I mean it. Like, the problem of our generation is that there is so much noise happening every day because of social media and because of all the different systems that we created and the different connection and network that we are working with. That the idea of having a community specifically connected to new ways of understanding art was to me exciting. And in particular was to me exciting because one of the most important aspects of the architectural field is that it bears very big cost. And to realize an object in the physical world, it takes a lot of years because it takes a lot of partnership and money to create a physical object. This is a problem that is very common in the art world. Christo sells sketches and sells art and sells pieces of like the drawing set before building an object because he wants to be disconnected from a donor that puts money to build one of his pieces.
Right.
Jeff Koons had to spend decades, I think 1 decade, to create the first balloon because the cost of that balloon was so enormous and the financial risk was so enormous for one art dealer that it took 2 of the biggest 5 art dealers in the world together to create the first balloon. So this is not novelty, right?
Right.
But I'm very excited because suddenly I saw people, sounds like a pun, but I saw people actually going from being a star in his own universe to be a star in the art universe.
Right.
Now, obviously, these came with financial speculation. So obviously, when you're bringing art to conversation of how to use it to speculate money, obviously you're talking about investment that they come because they're trying to make profit out of it, which is absolutely a true statement. And it's also probably one of the statements that is more controversial today because a lot of people are thinking, okay, yes, we started creating this metaverse because we want to find ways to solve maybe ecological crisis, and now we are using them to only sell expensive pieces of art. True, that's a part of the conversation, but also someone that before would have been unrecognized for his work found a way of being recognized. And to me, this is beautiful because, in particular, in the art market, a lot of artists were forced to find partnerships in art dealer or galleries to find the windows where to potentially sell their art and make their work a source of income big enough to survive.
Yeah.
And now it's not. And now, on the other hand, I see artists that in the past would have never been discovered because maybe they're working from different continents that are different cities that are not Los Angeles. And suddenly they find a window, they find a platform, they find someone that is able to buy their art without going through galleries and potentially to resell it. And potentially these artists keep on making profit because it's inserted in the smart contract logics of revenue, of royalties that is going to allow him to, or allow them to be to profit out of these pieces for the rest of their life. So this is why I started this conversation. I love the idea that we're creating a new way for artists to express ideas and a new way to make the market more responsible.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about your art because you told me that you see your art as being a form of communication.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, some of your pieces, like, I mean, there are pieces like this one that immediately tell a story.
Yeah.
And then there are others that are not as maybe literal with their storytelling, but equally amazing. Like
Yeah.
and, like this one, which I think is a combination of different
Yeah.
worlds.
Yeah.
It is what I interpret from it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's part of the beauty of the digital space is allowing you to iterate ideas very fast. Now, what you're looking here is actually the project that I'm going to finish next week with my student at SciArc. This project was looking at pieces from a digital artist called Roman Brodsky, and he was finding ways to recreate them and using animation and simulation make them alive. From there, they took these objects and they started reorganizing them. So what you're seeing here is the first initial project, the first still nature exercise. But then what is interesting to me is that these pieces are, in particular, these that you're seeing here, are objects that live in a digital world, right? Are objects that are now somewhere in a server in Palo Alto, I assume, and you can access them. And again, these pieces are a way for some of my students to find visibility. These pieces, you cannot buy them. They are not being minted per se. But the beauty of these objects is that the potential is there. So I hope that my students in the future are going to be able to maybe repay some of their student loan by selling art that they created while they were studying with me.
Yeah.
And this is really the beauty, the ultimate beauty of the new understanding of the digital space. We are not occupying necessarily a space that is of someone else. The students can use it. The students can sell it. The student can use these mediums to do whatever they want. So it's super exciting, and obviously it's also exciting for me because the software that we use to create this form of artistic expression and architectural experimentations are the same software that any architect using the world, but also the same software that any digital designer or creative uses to create the metaverse. So the transition is very simple. What you see here are projects developed inside Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine is one of the main platforms that we are using today to create, to invent realities, invent digital spaces, and inventing narratives. Unreal Engine. And Unreal Engine is a software that is also so commonly used in architecture. So the leap in between the disciplines is very little. It's more a leap of faith, especially now with the metaverse, because none of the things that we are discussing here necessarily are already here. And so that's why it's important to continue experimenting, and it's important to continue speculating, because it's in particular inside a university, the agency that these students have is very big. They are incredible students, super smart, super able to create narratives that not even their instructor was originally able to think of. And the beauty is that then there is going to be a future that is the practice outside the academia that is going to be harder and is going to have a lot of limitations. So it is my duty as an instructor to allow them to think freely and potentially to create objects that maybe in the future are going to become part of their way of financing further education or refinance the education that they had in here. But overall, it's a way to also be known. So we are in a moment of strong change. Yeah. The reality of the art world is changing. The reality of architecture is changing. And the society that we are living is completely changing. So it's exciting because this type of software allow us not only to visualize futures, but also to simulate them. And so the project that I'm developing with my students this year is mostly about simulation and simulating how different elements could actually start negotiating in between three main elements, which are atom, bits, and genes. So interesting conversation.
Very, very interesting. And I'm very excited to see what the finished product looks like.
Me too. And that's the best part, because my students have another week to complete everything. So I'm very excited to see the incredible work that they're going to generate.
So what is, this is a little sidebar, but what is the regular size of one of your classes look like?
So depends on the courses that I teach. Sometimes I teach to 10 students. Sometimes my classes are larger. But these projects that you see here are projects developed in 4 months. So they go usually from not being able to control software like Unreal Engine to create a beautiful environment. And that is a gigantic pride that I have to say. I have not really me, but really in the institution, because it's incredible how when you open up the possibilities to different fields, then when the students graduate, they are able to go into so many disciplines. A lot of my students are now working with NFT companies or real-time design companies. They are working for DreamWorks. And this is because the reality is blending. So when we're creating this metaverse, it's not too far from a lot of the reality of the practice of architecture that we already do.
That is amazing. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's so much to take in. It's so much to talk about. It's unfortunate that we are limited to 1 hour because now I have to be forced to move into the next level of conversation because you're talking about designing the future and we're
Hmm.
talking about NFTs, we're talking about the metaverse, but underpinning that is blockchain and cryptocurrency, which in itself is designing a future yet to be seen.
Hmm.
So, I would love to hear, your perspectives on crypto in general, on Bitcoin, on how you see, the different platforms like Ethereum. Obviously, Ethereum would, be a big uh, one for you because it has,
Of course.
kind of been the originator of the smart contract and everything that we are now able to do with NFTs and the metaverse is kind of built off of technology that was derived out of Ethereum. But now, there are others, Solana. Now we are seeing even NFTs being built on Bitcoin using Liquid. It's so much and it's changing so quickly. How do you perceive that?
I think it's interesting because we are at a stage in the cryptocurrencies conversation where we are creating uniqueness. So we are creating cryptos that are in some way being used by artists. We are creating cryptos that are being we're creating currencies that are being used by different fields. We are creating uh, speculative coins. We are creating coins that are instead connected with anything in the world. I was seeing just some days ago a beautiful project that is trying to create a connection in between the way that you exercise in the gym and the minting of coins. So a coin that you start minting and accumulating the more that you exercise, you train yourself. This is a beautiful way to understand what is our future. We are in a moment, especially today, where everything that we do tend to be monetized, which is terrifying to me.
Right.
There is this logic that every second of your life needs to be a way to make money. I think we are in a moment when these coins are really expressing that, are really saying, okay, but what if I could create a coin that the more that I study, the more I can accumulate a money that maybe becomes a value. The more I exercise, the more I drink coffee. I wish there was a coin, I would be a billionaire at this point. I wish. So we are in a moment in which we have a medium, we have a new technology, and we are trying to understand how to use it. I think the reality of today is the beginning of a larger potential. I would love to continue a conversation where people can use cryptocurrencies to give to their work a value that is larger than the currencies that they have in the country where they live.
Right.
I would love the reality in which these currencies are an opportunity to fight ecological crisis and understand how we can create a system that is more sustainable on a larger scale.
Right.
So I feel like we are in a moment of transition. And we're in a moment of transition because the technology is new. It's not new because it's been created yesterday, but it's new because the world that we are living today is completely new from the world that we were living 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We are talking today through this medium because we went through a pandemic. This medium would not be so technologically advanced if there was not something so dramatic that changed the way that we are using the infrastructure that was already existing, but it was not profitable enough to be a place where to develop these technologies.
Right.
So similarly, I think that we are using cryptos at the moment from a speculative point of view, but the potential to create a future is really infinite, and that's why I'm excited to live right now, because it's now that we are creating the future and we have the tool to do it.
And what would you say for you is the most exciting part of that technology that you are most excited to embrace?
I really think it's the fact that is disconnected from any system that we are familiar with.
Right.
I've been lucky in my life because I recognized very fast the power of social media. I became famous with my music because I uploaded, well, not me directly, but because my video was on YouTube.
Right.
So that's how I had the chance to make of a passion a career. That was the reason. I am the product of technology. But being the product of technology also make it so that the technological revolution, wherever it goes, can take or give you something. I was working in EMI just when the MP3 technological revolution was biting one piece at a time the economical power of that word. And that word collapsed because of a technological advancement, right? So being connected with technology obviously is pros and cons.
Yeah.
And now that we're living inside spaces, metaverse that are controlled by companies is concerning because we are providing literally a service to someone that should be giving service to us from our point of view. So the fact that this technology can allow you to be completely independent and disconnected from bigger corporation is to me the best part. Being decentralized is the main value that I see in these technologies.
And what would you say to critics who say that, you know, this Web3 revolution as it stands right now is not decentralized? It's still very much companies, even DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, aren't quite decentralized. It's still a small group of people operating these projects, DAOs. What would you say to people like that?
It's true. I think it's true, and it's true because to create this future, you need a lot of money. You need a lot of investment, and the companies that the individual that they can allow, that they have the power to do that, are very little. And if they are already investing with their companies. So it's normal that in this transitional moment, the future is not going to be decentralized. Now, I don't expect the future to be completely decentralized. I'm not expecting a future where the metaverse is not going to be in some way polarized with bigger companies. However, the potential of creating a space that is decentralized is what matters. Now, would be a decentralized space being as powerful as Meta? Probably no. But giving the freedom to user to choose where to go is the value to me. Doesn't mean that they're going to disappear. I don't think they're going to disappear. They are already here.
And maybe the opportunity for individuals to have that choice now forces centralized organizations like Meta to step their game up, to deliver better service, to deliver more value back to their consumers because they know there is an alternative.
Yeah. And because ultimately what we are doing when we're using this platform is really providing content to them. Yeah. So we are in a moment when our future and our data is going to come back and is going to come back being our data.
Yeah.
There is a future where we are going to be able to sell our data to someone for money and not simply gift it for free. And this is something that we are going to be able to do because we are going to be able to decide if we want to sell it or not. So they're going to have to provide us with benefits in order for us to use their spaces. So it's obviously a potential, but the reality is that we are getting there. And the reason why they are stepping into the game is because they have the power of money, which is fantastic because, again, me and you would not be here if it was not for companies that they decided to create this system for us. So they are not the devil. They are not. They are our partners.
Yeah.
But understanding that this partnership is going to have different relationship in the future is really the key of being decentralized.
That is an amazing take on it. So we've talked about your experience of building in the space. We've talked about your perspective around the space. But let me ask you this straight up question. Are you an investor? Do you only see the value of the space from the creative side? Do you see it from an investment side? Is there a disconnection between the investment side and the development building side, or
Yeah.
are they both as valuable and should be perceived similarly?
I think should be perceived similarly, but I think that maintaining the potential and the actual separate is important. A lot of time, my students ask me, should I put this digital space on the ledger? Should I mint it?
Right.
And my answer is always the same. What is the reason why you do it? Is there a user at the end that is gonna have a value in it? Because minting a piece just to mint it has little value to me.
Yes.
To me, we need to create spaces that they have the potential to be appropriated, to be experienced. And if there is not a place where to do it now, because maybe, and I am the first one, like this metaverse, a lot of these metaverse, they are not yet to the expectation that me as a designer has.
Right.
So should my students or should our artists accept limitations once again to put their pieces out? It's up to them. I like to understand my goal ultimately to be higher. And so to the people that they ask me if there is investment, if you need to put money, if you want to do it now, I say it's your choice. And I think it's important. And that's ultimately the reality of their space again. Just like in the past, you needed to find a limitation to make your piece of art being accessible to the world, the architectural physical world. So now, if you want to have your NFT loot, whatever they are, Bored Apes or whatever, you need to go into limitation. Is this the space where you want to be? If the answer is yes, then you should really be inside it.
So you didn't tell me if you invested or not. You're trying to
No.
judge that. Are you a crypto billionaire?
No, and actually, you are not going to be able to buy my pieces in any market at the moment. And the reason why I don't think they should be in the market is because the market is not ready.
But the customer is ready. I am right here, Cadeo. I am ready.
I know, but you can have so much more. Just be tight a little bit more, and I can tell you the reality of the future is going to be so much more exciting than where we are now. And I'm very positive. I think that our future is going to be very bright if we are able to tackle the issues that are important. And meanwhile, I'm going to continue being not a crypto billionaire.
until they start paying you for drinking coffee.
Say that if you want to pay me in a crypto coffee coin, I am ready for it. I cannot wait to have my salary being paid in digital currencies, coffee based.
I mean, on that kind of topic, it's interesting that Starbucks has not yet created a token that can be used outside of their network, because Starbucks points is already a token, right?
Yeah.
And I was having a conversation with someone recently, and they were saying to me, Starbucks is a bank because they hold so much liquidity, so much cash just from people who have bought Starbucks cards, to buy coffee, to buy food, and there is a lot of that value that will never be extracted by the customer, because people have lost these cards, they've gifted it to people who didn't use it. So, like the early days of Bitcoin, a lot of that is lost. And Starbucks has a treasury of this value sitting
Of
there.
course.
So, I mean, I could see.
There we go, though. You see, it would be so easy for them to be like, well, now these points are actually currencies and we can use them in some way. It's going to take some time. I think places like Starbucks, it's also like directly a speculation on who is the ultimate user.
Yeah.
I still remember when in companies, the athletic companies, they were not selling yoga leggings because yoga was too associated with an idea of mystical, magical practice. And this was not a lot of years ago. So the reality is that in this podcast, we are talking to a public that is the 0.01% of the world, if we are lucky. But we are not there yet. And we are at the fringe of speculation. And every time that we are putting some money in an app, either this being Instagram or being Starbucks or Venmo, we are in some way creating an economy that is potentially becoming a crypto economy. So we are there.
Very, very true. Cadio, it has been an hour of amazing conversation.
Alluminati already finished. So quick. We're going to do another one.
We are going to do another one for sure, for sure. But before you go, shout out whoever you want to shout out, maybe your students, maybe your school, anybody you want to direct us to your socials as necessary. Say it
Absolutely.
loud.
So you can find my work, the work of my students and collaborator on Instagram at instagram.com/theblondecadio or my website, andreacadioli.com. You saw some images here. And obviously, I want to thank all the people that allow me to be here today and talk with you about this. Obviously, Ricardo, the friend that we have in common. Thank you so much for this. And then no one else besides Southern California Institute of Architecture, where I practice as an instructor, and the Bellsborough Architect, where I practice as a designer. So thank you. And thank you, Illuminati. I would not be here if it was not because of you.
Thank you very much, Cadio. And definitely, we're going to bookmark it because I definitely want you back after your students have completed their program. Because I need
there
to
we
see
go.
It. Even if it's never minted, I need to see it.
And we didn't talk about Miami either. See,
we didn't even get to talk about Miami. We didn't talk about LANFT. We have New York. Maybe we'll meet up in New York.
There we go. We have an appointment.
I'm already trying to get Ricardo to come along.
There we go. We have it. We know it. We know where to meet. I buy my ticket. Let me go online.
Have some coffee. We'll have some cognac. We'll have a good time.
Sounds amazing. Thank you so much, Illuminati.
Thank you very much for being with us. Ciao.
Ciao.
Guys, thank you so much for being with me. Thank you so much for spending time with Cadio. It was another excellent episode. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Like Cadio says, we are in a moment in time that we're going to look back on and, just be in awe of how far we've come. Like I said all the time, adoption is inevitable. Guys, be blessed. Thank you for being with me.